Joining us now, Steve Cortes, CNN political commentator. You've seen him on CNN almost every day, and he's also, like me, on the 2020 Trump Re-elect Committee. Steve Cortes with us.
Me.
Steve, I want to get to a couple of things here. I'm going to get to elections in a minute, but we've been all over this Chris Collins situation because I know the district. I've done my show up there several times. Chris Collins, the first congressperson in the House of Representatives back Trump. This insider trading deal, I mean, you look at what the FBI alleged, the phone call made to his son, whole family saved $770,000. Why doesn't he just resign today?
Right. Well, gosh, I sure wish he would, because my understanding, too, is that if he doesn't resign, it's by New York state law, it's extremely hard to get him off the ballot.
Right.
And so, number one, I just, as a partisan, I hate to lose that seat, a seat that should be solidly Republican. But more importantly, as an American, these charges seem to be very substantiated. There doesn't seem to be much of an explanation or mitigation. And so the honorable thing to do, he betrayed the public trust, is to resign. I would also mention, by the way, I was shocked to learn, and, I like to think I know a lot about politics. I didn't know that sitting members of Congress could sit on the board of a publicly traded company. I think that alone is outrageous. I mean, the ethics rules need to be changed. They shouldn't be allowed to sit on a corporate board while they hold public office for us to, supposedly serve the people. That's going to be rife with conflicts, even for a very ethical guy. And it seems like this was not at all an ethical guy.
Steve, I can't believe you said that, because I was thinking, honestly, the exact same thing when I was reading it today, and I'm like, wow, I just was under the impression that if you're a federal official, you can't sit on a board of directors and get paid for that as you're sitting on the board when you're affecting potentially legislation that could affect that company, or you know about it, or you're chairman of a committee like he was. And I think Paul Ryan did the right thing in stripping him of that. But look, I am with you, Steve. I think, it doesn't matter, Democrat or Republican, you have to do the right thing. And I think that Chris Collins was caught in this red-handed. I mean, he saved family and friends $775,000, by picking up the phone. He had insider knowledge that, here's the question, A, he wouldn't have had he not been in the position he's in, and B, even if he did have it, and that CEO just tipped him off because, they went to college together, he still can't pick up the phone and make that call. That's insider trading one way or the other. I think he needs to go. We're in total agreement on that. And if he doesn't, you're right. I mean, I've been in that district. I've done my show there for 3 days one time. It puts that seat at risk because although it is Republican, there's a lot of working class Democrats there that voted for Collins, voted for Trump. And, they see this kind of thing, and it's exactly the opposite of what this president promised would happen in draining the swamp, and the exact opposite of what some of the Republicans have said. So I think he's going to, if he stays in,
John,
Steve, I think he loses.
Is that Jack Kemp's old seat?
Yes,
is that the same
Jack
district?
Kemp's old seat. Yeah, exactly. Now it got, it got shifted a bit.
He's one of the reasons I'm a conservative. When I was a youngster, way back in the 80s and starting to learn about politics, it was it was Ronald Reagan and Jack Kemp are the two men that I looked up to, and who I followed closely, and particularly Kemp, just because he did so much writing, which Reagan didn't tend to do. Right. And I read a lot of Kemp's books and writings and speeches, and had a huge impact on my mind philosophically. And then I ended up in college actually interning for him. He was then at a think tank called Empower America.
That's right. That's right. With Bill
Reagan
Bennett.
Days. And I went to Georgetown and interned for him, and he was just as wonderful a man in person as he was from afar. And we shared a lot of conservatism and football, and Jack Kemp was just an unbelievable American. So, yeah, what a shame, though, that somebody who holds that seat, which I think a lot of us, hold in high regard, would act this way and betray the public trust. He needs to resign.
You know what? You're spot on with that, Steve Cortes, because I was a disciple of Jack Kemp, too, when he had the tax policy, the Arthur Laffer curve at the time, where he kept saying, if you cut taxes, you're going to actually increase rates. Reagan did it, proved to be correct. He also did enterprise zones. He also believed in ownership, home ownership, and that people that had public housing. I mean, he had so many basically cutting-edge ideas. And then when he did, when he did Empower America, which was, I think, during the first Clinton term, he did that with Bill Bennett at the time, who was the former Secretary of Education. I went to many events with him, and he was just a bundle of energy. I mean, every time I saw him, the guy was just so energetic. He had so much energy in him. He loved life without a doubt. And I worked for his presidential campaign, I think it was in 88 when he ran. Turned out to be a debacle, but it was still fun. It was still fun anyway. 1980.
Great. Well, no, glad we share that. He never stopped being the quarterback, right?
No, he never did.
And I mean that in the best way.
He would go into a room and just the energy was, and it didn't matter. It could be 7 a.m. or 10 p.m. I mean, the guy was just a bundle of energy and a great guy. And he had all those children. I remember one time we were doing a campaign event for him, and his son was named the starting quarterback for the Seahawks for some game in Seattle. And he canceled the fundraiser. And he said, look, I can go and do this fundraiser anytime. There's only one time in my life that I'm going to be able to see my son Jeff start a game in the NFL. And he said, I am going to Seattle tonight, and I am going to be there for my son when he takes that snap. And all of us were like, okay, well, it's tough to argue with that. So
right.
We'll do the fundraiser some other time.
Great to hear.
I know. So let's get to the midterms. What was your take on Ohio, McMorris, Washington State? Where do the Republicans stand now, Steve?
Yeah. Well, listen, obviously I was glad we won Ohio, even though, by the skin of our teeth. But a win is still a win. I joked on CNN last night. I said, the guy who graduates last in medical school, what they call him? Doctor. So one vote or you win by 100,000 in your district, you're still called congressman. So I'm glad we won. But I think that's the good news. And we've been winning these special elections, generally. Have won 8 out of 9 of them, as the president pointed out. But on the bad side, and this is where I'm worried, and I think we have work to do as Republicans, we have underperformed in every special election. We have underperformed in those districts what Trump did in 2016, and in some cases underperformed very badly, including last night. You're talking about a 10% underperformance last night relative to Trump. So, what does that tell me? Number one, we are underdogs to keep the House. I think that is clear. We have an uphill battle. We have to act like it. We have to be scrappy and hustle and act like it's our race to try to earn rather than our race to lose. Secondly, and I really believe this, without Trump on the ballot, it's difficult to motivate the Trump coalition. It's difficult to get the deplorables out, and I say deplorables as a term of admiration. I'm counting myself as one of them. It's difficult to get the deplorables out and motivated when Trump himself is not on the ballot, but I really believe that we need to convince the voters that de facto he is on the ballot, because the Democrats, although they're being coy about it and they're kind of whispering about it, impeachment is their goal. It is their overarching goal. If they take the House, they are going to find any specious argument and legal reasoning to impeach the president. I think that is a fait accompli if they take the House. So let's try to convince our voters of the truth that this is really a referendum on Donald Trump. I think if we do that, John, I believe we have a fighting chance. It's still going to be tough, but we have a fighting chance to keep the House.
I agree with that. And if we focus on the economy and stop talking about this other stuff that really takes away from the tremendous economic success that we have. You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, trucking the truth across America, live from Washington, D.C. You're Godzilla of the truth in America. I'm with CNN political commentator and 2020 Trump reelect committee, Steve Cortes. Steve, if people go to the polls and they're voting on whether they want to continue this economy or not, I think the Republicans are going to hold the House by maybe 3, 4, 5, 1, something like that. But you're right. If this election becomes a, send a message, and I was given the story earlier that George Wallace got to 25% in the polls in 1968 with his mantra, which was send a message. So he was hovering at about 25%. He almost had a quarter of the vote in 68 running as an independent. However, on election day, he got 13%. So send a message and electing him president became very different, right? When you had to actually go in there and make a decision, Nixon, Humphrey, Wallace, his vote was 50% of what was tracking at. Now, we didn't have the get out the vote machinery and stuff of that nature. But could the same thing happen today where you've got the Democrats basically want to send that message, but the Republicans have the results and the economy behind them? Could that make a difference?
Yeah, it certainly could. Yeah, and listen, I don't want to sound too dire. I mean, I think it's winnable. I absolutely do. But I also think we need to recognize that we are, that we are underdogs, that we're fighting a battle here. And history argues against us. Generally, the first midterm for sitting president, for a new president, is disastrous. It certainly was for Obama and Clinton, who both lost control of the House. It was for Ronald Reagan back in '82. He didn't have control of the House, so couldn't lose it, but he lost, I think, 26 seats, something like that. in his first midterm. So history argues against us. Present polling, I don't put, as you mentioned with Wallace and even to the present day, I don't put too much emphasis on polling, but I think trends matter in polling. And what I don't like is on the generic ballot, it's starting to move against us. So the trend matters to me. Now, that said, again, I don't want to be dire and say the sky is falling. How do we win? I think two ways. I mentioned the one about convincing the public that impeachment is truly in the cards if we give the House, if we hand the keys over to the House to the Democrats. And then the second thing, which you mentioned, which is so crucial because it's everybody's lived experience, that their pocketbook is getting better. It's easier to pay their bills. They can do some things that they want to do, go out to an extra dinner, maybe take an extra trip, pay for tuition for a college course that they didn't know if they could afford to take at night. All these real-world things are happening because the labor market's improving, because growth is accelerating in this country, and I think even more importantly, John, it's broadening. So it's not just under the Obama slow growth years, the vast majority of the spoils of that slow growth went to only the very top of the economic ladder in America. Now we're seeing the opposite, where, for instance, all-time low in the jobless rate for people without a high school diploma. That's really the definition of economic underdogs. People like that are starting to participate in this economic boom, the Trump boom in this country. So we need to message hard, I think, on that. And yes, I think if people react to that then with, again, their own lived experience. They may not be really political. A lot of people aren't in this country. They're not like you and I and the folks who are on CNN and all the cable news shows and radio talk shows, but they do care a lot about what government can do to create conditions for prosperity, and that is happening. If we message well on that, I think we have a fighting chance, and I think we probably still lose some seats, but we keep control. And as you know, the way the House works, it really just matters who has control. It's unlike the Senate where you need a supermajority. You just need the majority. So as long as we keep the majority, I think, all is well. And frankly, I'm excited if we keep the majority for a new speaker. Not a fan of Speaker Ryan. I don't think he was very good at all at moving the Trump agenda. I think if we keep the House, we're going to get a speaker who's fantastic as an advocate of the 2016 Trump agenda. And that, to me, is really exciting looking forward to 2019.
Hey, Steve Cortes, you hit the nail on the head because in order for the Republicans to hold the House, they have to get voters out that are not necessarily politically engaged, but people that are getting jobs that couldn't get a job. And you mentioned those that maybe don't have the skill without college, some with a GED. Also, you got so many people that dropped out of the labor market after the 2008-9 recession because of bad credit. And I've said this on the air many times, when there are three people competing for one job and you have bad credit back in 2008, 2009, 2010, you simply were not going to get that job because, there were two other people competing, and so it was just one criteria they had. Now that doesn't matter. It's removed. People are entering the job market that have not worked for some time, which increased the tax base. All right, I got a couple more minutes. I'm going to go rapid fire. I'm going to give you the Senate race. I'm going to put you on the spot. You're going to predict the winner. Ready?
Okay.
Montana, Rosendale and Tester.
I think Tester loses Montana. I really do.
Missouri, Josh Hawley and Air Claire.
That's going to be harder. Unfortunately, my guess is McCaskill does hold on, but it's going to be a horse race.
Florida, Rick Scott versus incumbent former astronaut Bill Nelson.
Rick Scott. That one I feel strongly about. What I really love as an Hispanic is that Scott is starting to do extremely well among Hispanics in Florida, and if that trend continues, he's going to win that race.
North Dakota, Kramer, Kevin Kramer. I've heard he's not the best candidate. Heidi Heitkamp.
I think like Montana, I don't necessarily love the challenger, but I think that the incumbent is weak enough, Heitkamp, that I think Heitkamp goes down again. I think that's a pickup for the R's.
I agree with you. West Virginia, Morrissey and Patrick Morrissey, AG, and Joe Manchin.
Unfortunately, I think Manchin holds on. Of course, I want that seat, but Manchin, I will say, has enormous political skills. I mean, he's in the fight of his political life, but he is an excellent politician. My guess is he barely holds on.
Okay, Indiana, Mike Braun, Joe Donnelly.
I would have said, it's interesting, if you'd asked me this 2 days ago, I said Donnelly doesn't have a chance. He came out yesterday and said that he will vote for more border wall funding. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Very interesting for him to break. And incredible. So I think he gave himself a fighting chance with that move, smart move, the right move on policy and on politics. But I don't think it's enough to save him. I think it's enough to get him really close, but I think Donnelly loses in Indiana.
Okay, the Corey Lewandowski upset special. I don't see it, but I'm going to get another take on it. I don't see it. New Jersey, Republican challenger Bob Hugin, I guess is how he says his name, Hugin, and incumbent embattled Bob Menendez.
You know, listen, I sure hope he's right. It's hard for me to believe. It's outrageous that Menendez is still even in office. Talk about somebody who should have resigned, right, when he was charged, as I think Chris Collins should. Equal opportunity. And I don't like corruption on either side of the aisle. But, New Jersey, look, I live in Illinois. I know what it's like to live in a state that's that solidly blue, where even somebody as, scandal-ridden as Menendez can probably win. My guess, unfortunately, is he wins. If I'm going to give you an upset that no one is calling for, that I think we should keep on the radar, it's going to be in Michigan, where I think Stabenow, she's massively up in the polls, but her challenger is a dynamic, veteran, African-American, Trump-backing guy. I think that there's a chance that we could have an upset in Michigan. So I guess I'll trade you New Jersey for Michigan as my Cortes, uncalled for, long shot upset.
I would probably go with you on that if I had to pick an upset. I'm from New Jersey. Everything is corrupt in New Jersey. Menendez fits right in. I just don't see that happening, and I do like your Michigan choice. Okay, final one, we're out of time. Nevada, Dean Heller, Jackie Rosen. Can he hang on? Heller.
I don't think so. No, I think Heller goes down, and he deserves to, by the way. And Nevada, boy, important state for this election. It's going to be a crucial state for 2020, one that I thought we would win in 2016. We didn't. But with the present trends, particularly among Hispanics who are now clamoring to the president in approval because of their incredible increased prosperity, I think Hispanics will win Nevada for us this election and in 2020.
We're out of time. I want to thank Steve Cortes for being with us, CNN political commentator and Trump Re-elect Committee 2020. Thanks for being with us, Steve. Really appreciate you, Steve Cortes. John Fredericks Radio Network.